My name is Angelina Hilton, and I'm a member of the Sac and Fox Nation of Missouri and Kansas and Nebraska. I'm an artist, an activist, a wife, mother, and the founder of Native Made, where our mission is to increase Indigenous visibility. We are working on a special project that is allowing us to do this for 366 days a year. I say 366 days because we are launching the first edition of the On Native Land calendar for 2024 that is on pre-sale right now. I am so excited to share with you today that we have a special guest that I get to interview. Today we're going to welcome the Deputy Director of the Native American Rights Fund, Matthew Campbell. Now, a little backstory as to the reason why we're doing this is because with this calendar, not only does it include scenic images that are taken all over Native America from myself, it also includes educational and entertaining information about Indigenous people, history, and culture. It also includes highlighting of the Anishinaabe moon phases, names, and $6 of every presale goes to the Native American Rights Fund. Today, we're going to learn more about this organization, what they're doing, what kind of impact they're having, history about them, and what is it that they need, and how your dollars by purchasing this calendar is going to help Indigenous people. So thank you so much, and we're going to welcome Matthew Campbell momentarily. Stay tuned.
Thank you. Thank you so much for meeting with us today. I'm really excited that you are going to spend some time with us and that you're here. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's good to meet you in person. Again, my name is Angelina. I know we've had some email threads, but I am a member of the Sac and Fox Nation of Missouri and Kansas and Nebraska, and the founder of Native Made, where our mission is to increase Indigenous visibility. And so I'm really excited to have this opportunity to sit with you to learn more about NARF, who NARF is, what NARF does, and more about what your role is and what the type of impact this organization is having on communities.
Great. Yeah, pleasure to meet you.
Good to meet you too. So if you don't mind introducing yourself and tell us, what your role is with the company, how long you've been there, and what your past experience has been like that brought you to NARF.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Campbell. I'm the Deputy Director here at the Native American Rights Fund. I'm enrolled in the Native village of Campbell in Alaska. I grew up here in Colorado, though. Went to high school in the Denver area and went to Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. An interesting side story about Fort Lewis: it was an old boarding school, and part of its obligation is to provide education to Native students free of charge. And they tried to do away with their obligation, but NARF got involved in the 70s and 80s. John did, and they were required to keep that obligation. So interesting side note that my going to Fort Lewis was impacted by NARF long before I was even born. So anyway, went to Fort Lewis College in Durango for undergrad, and then wasn't sure what I was going to do and ended up going to law school at Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona, to study federal Indian law. So, and actually before that, I went to the Pre-Law Summer Institute for Native students in Albuquerque. That is a program designed to help students get into law school and be prepared for law school once they get in. So did that just after I graduated Fort Lewis, was there in Albuquerque for the summer, and then got admitted to Arizona State University, where I went to law school to study federal Indian law.
So what was it that prompted you to want to study law in the first place?
Yeah, I think a couple different things. I had gotten in trouble when I was young a couple times, so interested in knowing and understanding my rights was certainly something I was interested in. And then also taking courses in undergrad at Fort Lewis. There were several pretty influential professors and classes that I took. One of the courses was taught by Carrie Vicente, who I think was on NARF's advisory board at one point and was also on the board of ASU. He was I want to say he was Hickory Apache and taught Native American justice at Fort Lewis. And that certainly really piqued my interest in federal Indian law and that history, about the relationship between the federal government and the United States. And of course, just being Native, you always hear about stories and kind of that history as well. And so all of that together, I think, led to my interest in studying federal Indian law.
And then NARF was established in the 70s, you said?
So yeah, NARF was established in 1970, initially in California, and then they moved to Boulder a year later, where we were housed for 50 years. And then in our initial building, and actually we just moved to a new building this year, and it's kind of sad, but also sorely needed. And then of course our air conditioning went out at our new building, so right on time for the summer heat. But yeah, so we've been based in Boulder since the 70s, had our 50th anniversary a couple years back, and yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about NARF. So what is it? Why did it get started? How did it get started? And John, you mentioned him earlier. He's been with the organization since the very beginning, right? He was the founder, John Echo Hawk.
Yeah, he was involved from the beginning and became the executive director, I want to say in 71. I'm not positive on that, but yeah, I mean, at our founding, there was certainly a lot of civil rights movement. The movement was happening and had been happening for some time. And, AIM was taking place, the takeover in South Dakota. And I think there was just a real need for legal support for Native people, tribal nations. And there was just a real void there. And of course, tribes and Native people are have a real lack of capacity in terms of resources, funding to be able to hire attorneys and really develop that expertise. And at the time, federal Indian law really wasn't a field of law that was that well known and studied. And so, there was a need, and NARF was created to fill that void, to assist tribal nations in key areas and hold governments accountable. And I think it was the Ford Foundation that helped us kick off our work with an initial grant that they provided. And so that's kind of the beginning there, right during the civil rights movements, and the awareness and understanding that Indian country really needed to have support, and that they didn't necessarily have the capacity and resources to afford that legal support.
And what were some of the challenges that NARF was facing that NARF faced? We hear about what Indigenous people were facing at the time, but challenges that NARF was facing getting started at that time.
I don't know the challenges about getting started. I think I'm certainly happy to set up a call with John if you want to talk to him a little bit about that history. He'd be the one to talk, about those challenges. Of course, I wasn't born until, 13 years after it started. So I don't have the benefit of that institutional knowledge of some of the struggles. But, I think right away when we began, there was an immediate impact that was felt. NARF got involved in some of the fishing treaty wars in Washington. help tribes get recognized, and provided resources in terms of interpreting treaties, protecting natural resources. Of course, the Bolt decision out of Washington State was one of the biggest cases we were involved with early on, and had a massive impact, but also with some of the fishing cases out of Michigan and kind of the Great Lakes area as well. So
Um, so I'm glad that you shared that with us, because one of my next questions was going to be about the impact that NARF has had in some of the cases that have been one that have been positive for the community, and then maybe even some that the needs weren't met and are maybe have fallen to the wayside or still continue needing some attention. Can you share anything about that?
well, I think the impact is immeasurable. We hear John talk at various times about all the different things that he and NARF has been involved with, whether it's kind of the creation of the Center for American Indian Economic Development, or National Indian Urban Health, and all these different organizations, the Tribal Education Department's National Assembly, so many different organizations were, John had involvement with creating and understanding the need. More recently, we've created the Native American Voting Rights Coalition. We were involved in the creation of the Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition. So, I think the impact is immeasurable. Several of our attorneys were involved with the passage of NAGPRA. Some of the biggest cases to come out of Alaska, we have an Alaska office now, were handled by NARF. We helped create the Hawaiian, what is it called? Native Hawaiian Legal Defense Fund in Hawaii, which is almost the equivalent of NARF in Hawaii. So, the impact is really immeasurable in terms of how much of an impact NARF has had over the years, and all the different cases we've been involved in at the Supreme Court, at lower courts, and legislation we've helped get passed through Congress and different administrations we've worked with. So, it's hard to really create, it'd be interesting to create a list, but and some of that background might be on our website that Mata can provide, more of the background in writing that we have already. But in terms of the challenges or the needs that go unmet, I think there are needs that go unmet within Indian country for sure. Our capacity is limited by the amount of attorneys we have and the amount of funds that we have to be able to provide assistance to tribal nations and Native people. And so, we're always near our cap and what we can do. And it's unfortunate because we get so many different requests for assistance from all across the country all the time. And part of our management is we have to look at all of the requests that we get, and unfortunately turn a lot of them down, just because we don't have the capacity to take everything on. And so we usually are looking at our 5 priorities, right? And cases that fit within those, although most do, and cases that can have the biggest impact across Indian country given our limited resources. So we're trying to take those cases that can have that greatest impact. We kind of get the biggest bang for our buck, right? And part of, I think, my personal goal in working with NARF, I've kind of newly stepped into the deputy director role, is to help build up our capacity, increase kind of our ability to raise funds, and bring on more attorneys and staff to be able to assist and provide more services to Indian country.
Thank you for sharing all of that. Wow. If someone, you talked about requests. So the process of someone coming to put into a request and say, okay, we're in Indian country, our resources are limited, there isn't much available as far as knowledge or, you know, the how do you get in front of people, to the people that need services, and what would a typical day look like, you know, when someone comes in, and then those that you're not able to help, do you offer an alternative solution or other resources for them to try to reach out to?
Yeah, I mean, so we have an RFA process where, you know, they can send in a request via email. We get calls periodically that get routed to that process, and then folks can and sometimes will come into the office as well to make requests. So numerous ways that folks can make requests for assistance, and you know, we are involved within all kinds of different activities all across Indian country. You know, John's heavily involved in NCAI and heads several of their committees and subcommittees. And, you know, we have the Tribal Supreme Court project that interfaces with many of the tribal nations that are going to the Supreme Court. Think of the Brackeen case that recently came down, and the Navajo Nation water rights case or voting rights cases. You know, we have a heavy role in helping to organize and provide strategic advice when tribal nations are going to the Supreme Court, and we provide amicus support and strategy around getting good messages in front of the court that support the parties that are there. And so there's, you know, we also go to different conferences on education, on economic development, you know, all the different activities that are happening across Indian country. We're often there. And so, you know, I think folks have a good understanding of who we are for the most part. You know, I also think we're trying to broaden our reach within Indian country, where we're a little bit more established, but also outside of Indian country. I think we're not as well known, but I think we're growing, and the awareness about our impact is certainly growing as well. And you know, continually trying to develop our communications efforts around that, and making sure that folks are aware of who we are, and the need to support us and how we support Indian country. So, you know, in terms of a typical day, what was your question around that?
Well, just what a typical day for you might look like. You know, if it's, you know, some days you're in the office, some days you're out meeting people, there's big cases traveling all over the place. Every day, I would assume, isn't like the one before.
Yeah, I don't know that there is a typical day, right? They all look fairly different. But, you know, on any given day, I'm in meetings with our voting rights team to talk about our strategy around elections or the litigations we have going on. Right now, we have several redistricting lawsuits happening, which stemmed out of our first ever redistricting project that we created for Indian country this last redistricting cycle. And so, you know, several different lawsuits going on there. You know, I'm still involved in a couple of cases as the lead attorney, so I haven't quite given up all of my cases yet, and transitioned to a more management role. But, you know, I lead our Bears Ears lawsuit against the United States, and also defending the monument against the state of Utah. And so I may be, you know, writing briefs on that matter, or, you know, assisting in other matters, like a lot of the graduation cases we've seen lately with students. I've had a heavy hand in since I've been here at NARF, and strategizing about those cases and the various litigation that's happening around that, or boarding schools or environmental cases. So, you know, heavily involved in the day-to-day litigation aspects, but also then the strategic thinking about, you know, where we're heading, how we're trying to get there, how we can improve our work for Indian country in all these different areas, whether it's in, protecting the natural resources, boosting tribal sovereignty, protecting the right to vote, protecting religious freedom in various aspects or sacred places. So, I get to have my hands now in a little bit of everything, whereas before I certainly was more focused on the cases I was the lead on. And then also a piece of it is just the governance and the management of, the day-to-day operations. So
This has been an amazing meeting. I have learned so much, and I can't wait to go back and rewatch and learn more about the organizations that you shared with. And I'm really grateful that you took time today to sit with us and speak with us and share more about NARF, the Native American Rights Fund. If you have one key takeaway, piece of advice or knowledge or quote, something that you want to leave behind with folks, what do you got?
yeah, I think that the Native American Rights Fund has been here to support Indian country since its founding. Our tribal nations have faced immense discrimination and hostility from the founding, and have dealt with and survived so much over the centuries that the United States has been in existence, and of course have been here since time immemorial. And we want to be here to support our tribal nations to be able to sustain for the future, to provide for our future generations, protect our sacred sites, our natural resources, build up our political power so that our inherent sovereignty is recognized within all branches of government, and really provide that support to Indian country. And we need the support of the broader community to do that, Indian country and then non-Indians as well, so that we can continue with our mission to protect Indian country.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for being here today, Matthew.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope that you have a wonderful day, and we will talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any questions or need any other information, we can get that to you. Maud is a great resource to provide you other kind of background information in writing or anything like that. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'll make sure to send this to you too. I have this, it's still recording, it's raw. I'd like to take it and do some editing just to make, so it's a nice little video that we can share on our platforms and in our outreach efforts, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Again, Matthew, it was a pleasure to meet you face to face finally. I hope that I get to shake your hand in person someday.
Great. Well, if you're ever in Boulder, let us know. Or, we have offices in DC as well. So if you're in the area, just let us know.
Okay, I will.
All right.
We'll see you soon.
Yep. Take care.
Bye.